Welcome to another episode of the Practical Metaphysical Journey, the place where practical meets the paranormal, the mundane meets the metaphysical, and the spiritual meets the spooky. A place where we share the experiences of our journeys here on Earth. We encourage you to listen and see what resonates, because we're all different yet the same. We invite you to take a break with us, so unpack and stay a while. We're glad you stopped by for a visit. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Practical Metaphysical Journey podcast. And I am here with two other people, like we were the first time. So, quick intro.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
Hi, I'm Deb.
And David. And as we had talked about in the last podcast, we're putting this together with the intention that we'll just be talking about various topics that we've encountered or that we have learned about as we've gone through our own evolution in the metaphysical world, and what we learn about and how we approach things, and just not really to necessarily define everything, but more about like what are our approaches to these different topics. So for today, for this episode, we are going to be talking about, do ghosts only come out at night? And I got that title from somebody that I was talking to, and I had mentioned that I am a medium and I do work with spirits. And that person had actually asked me the question because she does watch a lot of the TV shows, the investigative TV shows. And her question was like, why is it always at night? Like, is that the only time they come out? So that was interesting. That kind of stuck in my mind as something to talk about, and with the whole idea of ghosts and spirits and so forth. So we'll just we'll talk about it, and like I said, we'll kind of talk about it from our standpoint of what we've experienced, what we feel. Is what's going on as far as spirits or ghosts. I tend not to use the term spirits, but I mean, it's all pretty much the same thing, I think. So we're not going to worry about those types of things. But what I wanted to kind of lead off with, so that we get an idea, and we talked about this in the first episode with the three of us, we all have different experiences and different thoughts on things. So what you'll see as we go through this, most likely, is that we all have slightly different definitions about something. We're not always going to agree on everything, and that's fine. That's partly what this podcast is going to be about, is to help people understand that you can have differences of opinion on these different topics, and that's great. But have the discussion and learn from each other. So wanted to kind of start with a few things of, talk about, I was going to go through the three of us, like, what's your definition of a ghost or a spirit? What do you think when you hear those particular terms? How is possibly your definition, or what your thought is of what a ghost or a spirit is, different from what you see a lot in the movies and TV? Because I think that drives what a lot of people think when they go through this. And then, we'll go through, I'll go last, but start with either Lisa, Deb, whichever one you want to.
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. When you were saying ghost spirits, I can use the word entities sometimes too. Yeah. To me, it's just a disembodied energy is what it is for me. It could take on different forms, obviously, and present itself if you are somebody that sees it or something like that. I think it could be any one of those things, but it's just not something that has a human body. It doesn't have, or an animal body. It doesn't have a physical body in this realm that we are in here on Earth.
I agree with that a lot. It's an entity, it's an energy form that's out there, and based on how people get information or how sensitive they are to different types of energy, is that going to actually appear as a person, or is it going to be an orb, or is it just going to be a series of noises? And
Or
then
lights,
or it's something moving in the corner or something like that. So for me, a ghost is pretty directly related to either people or animals, that type of thing. With me, I notice that I think that phrase tends to reach out to a lot of different things, to everything that makes a noise in the night. Oh, it's a ghost. Well, it might not be. There's a lot of other factors out there. I believe that there are elementals out there which stem more from energy creations that come from the earth or from different earth-bound energies, as well as space-bound energies. And then sometimes you've got things that are like a residual energy that people call a ghost. And that is something that may be a moment in time or something captured under the right circumstances that now it's presenting itself as ghost-like. But
it's like a loop of energies.
Exactly. And is that really a ghost or is it not? For me, a ghost also is something that can be interactive. It's an energy form that has some form of consciousness, as opposed to like those residual entities or energies that are out there that really don't have a consciousness to them. That's my definition of a ghost in my mind.
Everything she said.
Ghosts are my jam. I like my ghosts. I'm not afraid of them.
Then we could leave and you could just keep
Yeah.
recording.
There you go. Ghosts are my jam. I'll bring in my
Here's the
ghost
outline.
guests later. Yeah, right? Exactly. I love my ghosts.
Yeah, and I would say my definition's very similar to those, of course. And sometimes I do call them entities, but something that kind of popped in my mind that I think maybe as we talk through this, just to be conscious of is, there are different energies out there. So Deb, like you were saying, you also feel that there's elementals, that type of a thing. So like when we define it, if we're talking about a ghost or we're talking about a spirit, is it the spirit of a person, or is it of an animal, or is it one of these elementals who are an energy that we're seeing, but it's not necessarily human based or whatever, or we can go as far as saying like aliens and so forth. So yes, I think if I'm talking like ghost or spirit, it's usually the leftover energy. And I shouldn't say leftover, but the energy from like a human or an animal.
Yeah.
Somebody who's been of this.
That had a physical form at one
here,
time,
right.
Manifested in a physical form, and now has gone back into the energy consciousness, but that also is still keeping characteristics from that consciousness,
Yes.
which I think is a big part of it too. So, and whether it chooses to interact with us or with people or with how, in whatever way, there's people, I think, wired differently that pick it up on different levels, whether they hear them, see them, feel them, whatever. But yeah, I think that they still keep some of those physical characteristics and maybe evolve on them over time if we do get into a whole nother thing of reincarnation and lives and lessons. But that's for another time. No, yeah, but I do feel that they had a physical form, and there's generally a reason for them sticking around too. So there's some purpose behind it.
Yeah, I think so. If you go paranormal, I think that's where all of maybe I know I saw a gargoyle dark figure before, and I'm like, I don't know what that falls under. To me, that'd be more paranormal. Where if we're talking about ghosts, it almost goes more to the mediumship that Dave is talking about, where sometimes you can interact with them, or maybe you just see them walking from the bathroom to the bedroom every night or something. It's a residual energy. But for this conversation, I think for ghosts, we're talking more. Was a human,
right,
or perhaps an animal, a loved animal or something?
Yeah.
And you used the term a couple of times, consciousness, and for me that's key for my definition, because I do feel that your consciousness, that the part that makes you, lives on regardless of the physical form that you're currently in.
Absolutely.
So when you do pass away, that consciousness still just continues to exist.
So could you elaborate on that? Because I know you've done readings before where the entity or the spirit that you're communicating with for your client, they know what's going on in the present. They're not just talking about, what happened maybe when they were alive as a person, right? They know. They're conscious of what's happening even in the present.
Yeah, I think they do understand and are still present. It's just they're not in a physical form anymore. I remember the one time at one of the meditations we had, there was 2 young people showed up that I had never met before. And at the end of the meditation, I asked, can I share something that I encountered? And I described what I had seen and what the message was. And it happened to be the guy's grandfather was there. And it was funny, and what kind of made him go, okay, yeah, you got the message. He and his friend came to the meditation. They were supposed to be building a set for a show that they were doing that night, and they skipped doing that to come to the meditation. And I don't know if you remember the message. The message I got from the grandfather was, get back to work and finish what you started. So that's when he went, okay, Grandpa.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah. Well, he knows I'm here instead of doing what I'm supposed to.
Oh, my goodness.
I think the consciousness that part of that person just always exists. It's still there. They're just not there in a physical form. And you're right. Some of us can perceive that or feel it where other people don't.
Or don't want to.
Or don't want to. Absolutely. I know some of those people as well. Because I do think everybody's capable of it.
I agree.
But it's like I think it's almost so kind of like a talent. Some people, everybody can learn to play piano. But there's just some people, you can learn. Yeah, there's different.
It's true. It's true. Yes. Or attempt that on some level, and they're going to be more proficient than others. I know my piano teacher just spinning in her grave for all the years that she tried to teach me, and I got the first 8 bars of Fur Elise down, and it was never going to go any further than that. And but yeah, absolutely. Where anyone can sit down and learn that type of thing, and anyone can, depending on your level of interest, work on this particular talent or, gift. But again, I think it's just a skill set, another skill set that if you're interested in, you can always work towards. And on different levels too. It's really interesting how you're able to pick things up with your mediumship talents and get information the way you are. I get my information in a little bit different way, and I tend not to pick up so much from individual strangers in a setting like that. But I have a few people that come through that I've known as acquaintances that have crossed over and are now entities on the other side, and they will talk to me like that. And they're generally family members of friends of mine. And there's no reason. I don't know why it's so easy for them to come to me and talk to me and give messages and all. I wasn't terribly close to any of them. So I'm still kind of exploring why that is the way it is. It's interesting. There's a lot to learn with that.
Yeah. It's, for me, I've always seen spirits. I grew up that way. I would have conversations with people, and based on the way we're pretty much all raised in this isn't real, it's just your imagination, and that's what I thought it was. I thought it was like my imaginary friend or something that I was just having these conversations with. But at some point I finally started to trust what I was seeing was a real, it was somebody that had been living. And when I got over that fear of looking weird and started asking people, hey, do you know so-and-so? And finding out there really is that person. And then, they said, get back to work and finish what you started. And that had meaning to that person.
Mm-hmm. The validation was there.
Oh,
for
okay.
you.
Yeah, I'm starting to get it. So, and I mean, there was even the one time where we were having dinner and I wrote the name down, Derek or Eric, I forget which one it was now.
Derek.
I wrote it down. I looked at you too and went, who's Derek? And I don't know. And then a couple of days later, it happened to be somebody that called us to come in and help them with their house. So it was like, okay, yeah, I got to trust this stuff. Am I 100% on point every time? No.
But sometimes it presents later, and you're like, okay,
Yes,
So,
I did. Did a reading for somebody, and I kept saying, you have somebody next to you, and I described the person and the relationship that I thought they had with this person, and the person that was there sitting across from me was going, I don't know who that is. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. And that spirit would not go away.
Yeah.
Was very insistent that he knows who I am, and I'm not going until he acknowledges me. And after about 10 minutes, and I'm thinking, oh, this reading's going really well. But after about 10 minutes, the client said, oh, I know who it is now.
Yeah.
And then that person stepped to the side, and then the rest of the people came through.
Oh, cool.
That wanted to talk to this person. So
that's interesting. So somebody receiving a message, it makes it difficult sometimes because you've got your list of people you're hoping that shows up,
yes.
right? That that you won't ask for maybe or something, and then who you're trying to explain. They're like going through all the I can't place this person. I have no idea who this person is.
And I think that was it, because there was two people that he wanted to kind of connect with. And this was just out of left field that this person came through. But those two people couldn't come through until he acknowledged this first
person. Yeah, they're like, if those two come through, I'm not going to get my chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
So, it was... But it's get over that fear of being wrong.
Right, the trust factor.
Yes, and that somebody's going to think you're weird, or this is stupid, or... It's like, no. I have another friend that occasionally I'll say, okay, who's so-and-so? And his response is, fine, what'd you see? Because he knows if that's coming through,
better pay attention.
I'm hearing something from somebody.
And that's what's so interesting, that we're talking about that consciousness that the spirits or entities have, because they are there and presenting themselves, and there's a purpose behind it, which that to me is what's so fascinating, is that with whatever happens when we eventually do make that transition, what's going to keep us here? Who am I going to need to reach out? Oh, I got a list, so I know why I'm going to be sticking around. There's going to be a lot of people's shoes tied when they go to stand up. But it's just different things. It's like, why are they there? And it does show that. And I just think that's the part there. And trusting ourselves. If people are coming to us for readings, they know we're weird anyway. So why we worry about whether they think we're weird, I don't know.
I guess one thing where I have a little bit of a different opinion than that is I don't necessarily feel that spirits visit us because there's a purpose. Mm-hmm. Many times it's somebody who's a friend or a relative, and they're just stopping by. Just like in the physical form, your friends stop by to say hello, or they come by for a visit, just to be friendly. I think that happens sometimes too.
Yeah. It's not always a mission.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's not that there's a message you have to hear.
Right.
They just happen to come by because they want to say hello and make sure everything's okay.
See, that's always cool to me. I think that's great because, we all have so many loved ones we don't want them to be gone. So whether that makes it easier for me to believe that, say, my mom or my dad are out there as spirits doing whatever, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And that's another thing that I find very interesting too, is that the closer my family members are, the fewer messages I get. I have a more difficult time tuning in with them. So I always wonder what that little bit is. But yet my husband, when he sees spirits and he sees them like you'd see a real person, he has seen my mother and father, who he never met, on the living plane here. And he has seen them. And other people have as well. But it's really funny that they're not my main source of communication. So that's always an interesting thing, too.
So I will ask you, because both of you are talking about your experiences. I'm the one that's like, I don't want to see that. So I'm going to participate from one aspect, but not from yours. So tell me, when you are seeing a spirit, Does it always show up the same? Does it always look like a person? Do you just maybe just see certain aspects, or is it just a shadow figure but they're telling you something? What are you experiencing when you're experiencing that?
Different ways. One of the first times I really saw a spirit was in an old high school theater. It was a dark and stormy night, and I was a choreographer for it. My mother was there as a rehearsal pianist, and a couple of friends of mine. One was directing and various other things. And the kids were on the stage rehearsing, and all of a sudden they started pointing to the back of the theater, behind the seats in the lobby and all that. And they were young kids, so we were like, all right, what's going on? And so we had a feeling that there was something out in that lobby where the staircases went up and around the corner and all. So I was like, all right, well, we're all going to go take turns. We're all going to go look out there. And then later we'll compare notes, because it had to be a science experiment for me. And my mother walked out there, who was very perceptive with all of this type of thing and wanted no part of it. Much like you, she's like, nope, don't want it. Nope, nothing. And we're watching her, and I looked at her, and I just remember her eyes getting big, her mouth dropping open, and her starting to back up, and I got worried for her, so I pulled her back. So then my friend Paul went, and he stepped up, and he saw something, didn't know what. We decided we weren't going to compare notes immediately. And then I went, and the figure that I saw was up at the bend of the stairs, and it was a black shadow. Now, this thing was so detailed, and he was standing with like 1 foot, a couple steps higher than the other, a hand on the rail, all blacked out, no face, nothing, but I could see the cuffs of his shirt and his pants and a hat that he was wearing. And, of course, the flash of lightning, and I'm like, I'm out, peace out. So, and then when we compared notes later, and we all wrote it down and gave it to a neutral person, that was pretty much what we had all seen. And that was the first time I think probably one of the only times I ever saw a black shadow figure. Since then, I don't really see apparitions of people as they appear. The way I get information from them is more, I feel like it comes right into my head right here. It's a voice that's telling me something, and I get the information from them. Sometimes it flows really fast, sometimes it's a word or two, and it's not all the time. I have a filter for that. But if I'm with somebody else, like when David gets a message, or you're there too, it's you guys work like amplifiers for me, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And it might trigger something a little different in me. Like I will notice that as David's giving a message, I will see a figure of somebody here off to the side or something. Or the same with my husband. If he's somehow telling me something, I will see that person or get a better sense of them. I don't see fine features, but I can tell where that
something is.
Energy.
That's what I've heard you say before. It's like I perceived that there was something, somebody standing between the two of you, and it was about this high. And like you'll give definitions, but not necessarily.
It's
specifics.
Almost like a waveform type of thing. Mm-hmm. Like I'm seeing something not quite as clearly in that space. More of a flicker, like a little, not really sparks, but it's just it's like a wave, like a little type of thing.
And there's different colors sometimes?
Sometimes there's colors.
Okay.
But I notice like more and more lately when I do get messages, it's a voice coming through my head, and they're coming a lot more quickly, and I can't just sit and do it. I've got to be busy. So you see sometimes people that distract and do things.
Okay.
And it's mostly because I really want to get these messages out there that quickly, or they're telling me things so quickly that I have to kind of be doing something else at the same time, because I think it's the influx of your energy that's kind of melding with mine.
Is it more than one person at a time? Do you
Sometimes.
So you've got like a whole bunch of information trying to...
Sometimes. Okay. A friend of mine whose parents died within a year or so of each other, and she had a lot of unresolved issues with them, and they came at me with one night and were both talking to me. And I mean, these are people I had never met, only knew through her family stories of. And the messages I got were so fast and so clear, and they were talking over each other. And it was just an interesting thing. Yeah, camera went out. Who shut our camera off? And but it was really interesting because they definitely had a message, and while I was giving her the message, it was about you need to look in this desk drawer of your dad's. She's like, I've been everything in this house. I've been through everything. There's nothing there. I go, no, there is something, and it is related to you. And it wasn't like she had lost something and was looking for it. I'm like, you have to do this. And went on through whatever else we discussed. And then I think within a day or so later, she reached out back to me and said that, she did pull that drawer out a little bit further after she'd gone through everything. And the item that she found was a pair of her baby shoes that they had preserved.
Wow.
She never would have known or found.
Wow.
And it was their message of how much they did cherish her as a baby, and they wanted that message to get clear.
Yeah, and wow. That's really, so that again shows that they are present with what's happening right in the moment. And they were conscious that, hey, they were not in the physical anymore, but could give a message to their daughter.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That was really amazing. And I don't listen to them all the time. I separate myself off from this energy a lot of times. Generally, if somebody asks me, I'll try to tune into it. Once in a while, it'll come, like in a group setting, like when we're at one of our classes or meditations or something, then you can't help it. That door is already open.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to walk through. Now, why don't you want to see them? I'm just curious. This is my part, because I'm like a whole about it. But it's just interesting to me about what that difference is.
I think there's just so much with just the physical realm that if I had that going on too, it's like, I mean, I know people call it psychosis and there's different terms you can use. I don't even want to deal with that. Like, I can hear things sometimes. It's not that I'm not getting messages.
Yeah, because you see more stuff than you.
Right. And like I said, I've had experiences, but on the normal, I'm just like, I don't think that's my gift. Like you said, we each have our own, like, I just don't think that is my gift. And I've purposefully said, not in this lifetime. Not this lifetime. But it's okay. Like
Which is legit. Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's not my niche. Yeah. I'm choosing that. I'm saying that. I mean, that could change. Maybe next year something changes. I don't know. But up until this point, I'm like, no, I'm just as glad to be like, hey, you can call my friend David and Deb. You want to talk to somebody, they're your people. That's fine with me. Or if I need a message and I want to go to somebody, whatever, that's okay. That's all right.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I was wondering the same thing. Why she didn't want to see that.
Yeah, and it's nice because it's not a fear-based thing.
No,
that's the thing. It's just like, okay, nope, this isn't where my interest is. And I think a lot of times our interests change over the years. There are times I've been super focused on crystals and things like that, and now I could care less about crystals.
I feel like I would be overwhelmed. Like, I mean, we're going to talk about this kind of leading up. I want to hear your story, but it's leading up to some of our things with, boundaries and what can we do if we are somebody that's in tune, that's getting overwhelmed, or like, I don't know what to do with all this information. We're going to talk about that. I just feel like, I've got other things that I'm supposed to be here to do.
Right.
This is not one of them.
Yeah, I think I see them, I know I see them differently than you, Deb, in that when they first come through, a lot of times it is similar to your experience where I see a disturbance in the field. But I liken it to, in the summer when you look on pavement and you see those heat waves coming on.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I see a lot of times.
Yeah.
I see that just
the weird ripple effect.
Yeah, that ripple effect.
Yeah.
So then that's my sign that kind of like tune into what's going on over there. And then a lot of it comes through in my head. A lot of the detail and so forth. I occasionally do think I see somebody physical there, and then then it ends up being a spirit. Like there was one time where we happened to be today in my living room, but I was walking through the living room, and in that one window over there, I swear I saw somebody peeking in the window. So much so that I ran over to that window and looked out in the backyard. I was expecting to see somebody running through the backyard, and there wasn't. And that's when I was like, okay, that was probably a spirit that was coming by and visiting. But yeah, so once I tune into that energy being there, then I'll start getting images. I may hear things. I've also have kind of set up, I guess, a system of signs so they can communicate messages to me.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so like typically if I see the the person dressed in black, then it's somebody who's passed. If I see them in white, it generally has meant it's somebody recently passed.
Okay.
Or it's somebody living. So it could be a spirit trying to tell me about somebody who's living. So I see that image, I see them dressed in white.
Wow.
If I see any color, it's usually like a piece of clothing or a piece of jewelry. And they show it to me in color because that'll be the thing that validates who I'm talking to.
Right.
So I'll say I see wearing a red necklace or something like that. And that person will, she had a red necklace or whatever it was. The other thing that I have set up, and you've seen me do it, is if it's connected to somebody who's in the room, I ask them to stand next to that person. And based on where they stand, that tells me if it's mother, father, cousin, uncle, or whatever.
Okay.
So there's like positions around
Left
the
side,
person.
right side, step back a step.
So if it's off that person's right side, that's the mother. If it's off that person's left side, that's the father's line.
Okay.
And then if they're behind the left side but very close, it's probably the father. A little bit further away, it's the grandfather.
So they have a consciousness to understand what you're asking them to do. So that's bringing in that consciousness question again.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah. So that's how I see it and how I get the information.
I tried that for a short time with giving them, in this position, and then I still forgot which position I was using for which. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just here to confuse y'all, apparently. So just go ahead and just tell me what you got to tell me because I can't remember what my rules were. So yeah, I think I confused them more than they confused me. But yeah, I think that, and I think too, I don't see them because I don't necessarily want to see them. Seeing that black shape the way it was not comfortable for me. And so I think I'm more comfortable hearing from them than actually seeing them and that type of thing. So I don't generally see them anymore, which I'm okay with. I'll listen to them, but...
Yeah, I don't see them all the time.
No.
I do frequently see them.
And it depends, too, because I think that their energy levels are different as well, and that it depends a lot of times maybe on atmospheric conditions. What energy is out there that they need to draw from if they do need to? And, because I have no idea of how that energy works. Why would their energy be weaker or stronger in other times? I haven't thought that much about that, but... and I will get into the boundary part. I don't share my energy with them in that way. So everybody has to keep to their own with that. But it's interesting when all that comes into play.
Have you ever surprised an energy? Like, have they seen you and went, oh, crap?
Wait, you can see me?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
My husband has all the time.
Oh, really?
All the time.
Okay.
When he first started seeing them, he had some instances where they were like, "Oh my gosh, he can see me," and then we did have problems because they would follow him.
Okay.
And he
now that he could see them, they're like, "Oh, let me get my message," or whatever that is.
And it was generally times like when he was out walking the dog one day, and he saw a couple walking in the neighborhood, and to him, they're very real. They have shape, color, form, and he noticed them, and they noticed him notice, and then they started following him, and the dog didn't like it either. And there was probably no harm intended, but they were surprised that they recognized that, and it's not a field that he wants to play with. But if I'm there with him, I'll go ahead and kind of step in as the medium that is going to tell them, okay, if you've got messages, give them to me, and we'll leave him be. Yes, we saw you, but now whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But you don't have that permission.
Yeah, again, going to boundaries.
That's right. You can talk to me.
Segueing into boundaries,
not to him.
Yeah. It's something else that you mentioned that was, you said you have to be doing something to kind of get clear your mind so that you can get the messages. I usually have to have something in my hand that I'm fidgeting with. And what I've read and heard from different, people that I've talked to that do this, is they said that it's your creative side of your mind that does the connection with the spirit realm. But part of being able to connect and opening that channel is to get your logical mind out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So by fidgeting, you may see people like scribble or whatever. You're doing something so that eventually your logical mind just gets bored and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So that the creative side then is open. So you fidget with whatever's there,
Handy.
papers
Yeah.
that you have.
Mm-hmm.
When I do a reading, I have a stone in my hand, and I'm just constantly fidgeting with that, and that's my way to kind of get my mind to be bored.
Gotcha.
It keeps my mind from trying to superimpose what I think something should be
Yes.
telling me. So, which I thought I heard a voice.
Just now?
Yeah.
You looked around? Okay.
Yeah,
I
did.
wondered.
I thought I heard a voice.
Maybe
Yeah.
it don't count on the recording.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah, yeah.
What did it say?
It said something like "Hey," right, or "Hey," something. Yeah, I heard
They're
it.
maybe
from
giving a
off
confirmation of
over
what we're
here.
talking.
Could very well be.
Yeah, I mean, I have had people come by the house.
Mm-hmm. It was a male voice.
Yeah, there is a particular male that comes by every once in a while. I think he was either owned this land or was connected with it at some point, and just kind of comes by and checks.
And it's funny because I can feel that, and if I wanted to tune into it, I could probably go off and do a reading on it right now. But this is our time, not his. If he wants to connect later, that's fine.
Boundaries.
Yeah, again, and that is, I think, the most important.
Did you see that guy today?
No.
Okay. Just checking if that
Yeah.
was coordinating with that. Okay.
Yeah, no. But there was a couple of months ago, I was sitting on the front porch, and I have 2 rocking chairs. Of course, I'm in one, and he came down and sat in the other one. He was like, "I'm coming by to visit," and I admit this year I didn't take care of the yard like I would like
Yeah.
to.
We had a lot of storms and things.
And
so
it was
that
such a dry spring and so
Yeah.
forth. And he came and he called me on it. It was like, you said you were going to keep
it.
this place up to speed. You were going to take care of this place and all that. And so I was like, yeah, you're right. I'll get there.
It's interesting. And then there's another thing too. How do you feel when you're speaking with these spirits or entities? Do you ever have a fearful sense around them, or what? I know one of our topics was, how TV and Hollywood and all these formats bring about the topics of spirits and all this other stuff. And I of course, they have their own agenda. What's going to collect views? And some people like that rush from the fear, the endorphins and the adrenaline and whatever it takes, so they want to be scared by them. But that's not my part. I don't want to be scared by them, so I'm not going to summon that type of thing.
And like we were talking when we talked about the definitions of what we think a spirit is versus other presences or somebody that might be here. If the spirit is somebody who was here in the physical world or an animal or something, I think of it, they're still a person. So you should treat them that way. You should treat everybody with respect. So, I do get upset sometimes when I see some of these TV shows where they're going in and they provoke people or provoke spirits and so on. It's like, wouldn't treat
unnecessary.
You wouldn't treat somebody who's here physically with you that way. Don't do it to a spirit either.
Yeah, even if and a lot of times you see it because it's like, well, a serial killer lived here and I'm going to teach them a lesson. Well, now you're putting yourself in a position of judgment.
Yep.
And you're now creating an energy. So whereas my energy I try to keep fairly even, and throughout any communications that I'm having with them, I'm not going to go out there and say, you better talk to me, or you better knock on this. I want to hear a sound, or else what? Do I really want to find out? If you're going to feed negativity to negativity, if there is an entity out there that has embraced a more negative aspect through whatever is making it up, why are you going to bring that back? And then are you leaving it in a better place? Most of these places aren't. And they're doing it for views and, but what have you done to help that entity or have a relationship with it other than try to fight something? We can all fight a shadow. Who's going to win? Nobody, because have you really fought anything? And so nothing's been accomplished. And what message are you really getting?
So do you only see them at night?
No. No.
Hard no on it.
But I understand. I think that part of seeing them at night is because there are fewer distractions, fewer visual distractions. So, I may not see them during the daytime or something because I'm not thinking of it. I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing, the salt lamp and I'm seeing the plant and I'm seeing this and the fan is spinning and all that. So without those distractions, I may be like, oh, I feel like now there's something over here that may have a message or whatever. And then I'm still kind of on the fence with orbs and that type of thing and things that show up at night in the lights and all that. I don't know enough about that and haven't explored any of that to really see or even know what that's all about. But no, I tend to see them more during the day because I'm sleeping at night. I want to see them at night when I'm sleeping. Let me get some good snooze time in.
And I agree with your point where you're saying that it may be at night because you tend to be a little bit more relaxed. You're kind of letting the pressures of the day go, and I think at that point you naturally become more open to detect things. So I agree with that. But for television. Or other podcasts or whatever it is, these people that do paranormal investigation, I think it's that they want views. So if you're doing something in the dark, that's more mysterious, scary, so they want that. And I think too for some of the equipment.
I was just going to say,
because they do the infrared cameras and so forth. That's going to work at night versus in the day. So, I think that's part of the reason why these.
Well, again, that's paranormal,
right?
And then we're talking about medium, like Teresa Cavuto. She's not going to do a reading at night,
right?
You come into her kitchen table in the afternoon, and you're having a conversation with. Yep. I mean, I think intention's a lot of it too, right?
Absolutely.
So you are intending to connect with someone that's passed over, or like sometimes we're seeing live and energies, but that is that intention. Where for the other, that's that intention for that genre that they're trying to.
Yeah, and of course, if you're going to investigate somewhere, you're going to do it at night because there are fewer people coming and going. You've got more of a chance of having that quiet time, that alone time, and being able to do that because it's the time that's less traveled. But during the day, you're not going to go and investigate a plantation or a manor or something like that where people are giving tours, because you're just not going to get any credible evidence then. There's too many things that can be debunked then. But but as far as communicating with them, anytime, anywhere,
So have either one of you been to a medium to get a reading?
Oh, yeah. I'm a sucker for that stuff. You bet I am. Of course. Yeah. Many times. From the time I was young on, my dad used to take me to psychic fairs. So we would go, and I was pretty young at the time. I was just a kid, and it's interesting that he was interested in all those things too, whereas my mother was not. And he just had a healthy interest across the board. So I've been going to them for ages and ages, and I'm all different types of mediums and at all different points in my life, not just when I was trying to connect with a loved one or something, and I've had great information come through, amazing stuff come through, and I'm always open to it too. I don't feed into it, so I'm giving everybody a lot of hints. But I'm pretty selective of who I go to also. I don't go to the red palm readers with the neon palm in the window. That for me is a big no. But I kind of wait to see if there's a vibe at a psychic fair or something like that, or if somebody's coming through. So I've done that a lot.
I have as an adult, And I didn't really know the difference between necessarily a reading versus, like something else, like just a psychic reading. I didn't know if there was a difference, because not all psychics, I think, aren't mediums per se.
Right. Yeah.
They're giving you information based on maybe your lifetime or whatever they're seeing and hearing, but it's not a medium. Nobody showed up. No other energies showed up to the reading. So I've had both, and both were very instructive. Like I got good information from both of them. But the one time I had my dad with me, the psychic or the medium pulled him into our reading. Like I'm the one that booked it. He got all the messages.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, I guess I was just the conduit to get my dad there to hear what he needed to hear. So that was pretty entertaining. I was like, okay, what is happening here? What is going on? But yeah, it's been good for both. Good for both experiences.
Yeah, I've seen two. I had a tarot reading from one person, and the other person I've seen twice. But like you, Deb, the woman that I've seen twice, I just had a good feeling. Like I felt like there was information she had that I was supposed to hear.
Yeah.
And that's why I've seen her twice. And it's been very good information coming through.
One of the ones I went to years ago, and this was how I first experienced somebody that was not a good reader. And I was really surprised by this, but she was telling me, I was about to get into a marriage early on, and she said, well, you shouldn't marry this person. I'm like, well, the date's set, the hall's booked, so it's going to happen, okay? So whatever. And then she actually got angry with me. And whatever stuff it brought up in her, it brought up. And so she started really imposing a lot of things on me. And she's also the only one, and I never trust this, of a medium or a psychic reader or anything else. This will shut me down immediately and tell me that this is them and not my information. She actually told me that when I was going to die and how.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be 84 years old. Well, you're going to be senile way before then. Why are you going to feed that to somebody? Whether it's true or not, I guess you guys can stick around and find out. But I apparently won't know.
That's a good question, though. So answer that, though. Have you ever gotten information that you did not give someone because of that?
That was part 1 of 2 parts. Do ghosts only come out at night? Stay tuned in a couple of weeks for part 2. Thank you so much for stopping by.